Hey there, welcome. If you're new to the channel, this is Vampiric. Today I'm stepping away from my normal gaming content to share my favorite customizations and tips for enjoying Windows 11 moving into 2026. This is not going to be a complete list of my recommendations for Windows users, but it is my list of the most important customizations I prefer to keep me happy with Windows. Let's get into my recommendations for feeling in control of your Windows experience in 2026. Starting off, customizing every settings page one at a time is my favorite way to really get to know the system, really understand what features are available and what features I like to disable in order to keep my experience tailored to my own needs. I try to disable any marketing or tracking data that is allowed to minimize data mining at all costs. This tutorial might seem like it's at times very geared against data mining. I mean that might be one of the core reasons I chose to make this video. So the first thing you're going to want to do to get to the settings app is go down to whatever search bar is at the bottom of your screen and type in settings if it's not already available to you on the initial start menu. Once you've got settings open, you're going to see the home page, but this is really just a page for easy access of frequently used settings like Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, so on. So we're going to skip past this. This isn't really where most of the customization happens. We're going to skip right into this left-hand category called System. The first system settings page here is display options, and to save time, I'm only going to be recommending a couple of things here. First, I recommend clicking on each one of your displays up here at the top and making sure that under Advanced Display, all of them have the maximum allowed refresh rate selected. This is going to offer you the smoothest experience with Windows possible. It's going to offer you to take full use of your monitor's refresh rate. Depending on your monitor, that's going to be a different refresh rate for each user. The only other thing under display that I'll make a quick mention of is the graphics options. If you're a gamer, you're going to want to make sure that your correct high performance GPU is selected so that any game that you want to run has the needed power to complete any task that could be thrown its way. Moving back to the core system settings page, we can skip over sound, notifications, focus, and head straight into power because the pages we're skipping are pretty self-explanatory and easy to figure out. On the power settings page, it's my personal preference to keep my PC at a high performance level so that, again, I always have the required power available to accomplish any task that I would want to get done on my PC. I also like to make sure my computer never puts itself to sleep, while also setting a reasonable time for the screen to shut off after so my experience is never interrupted, yet my screen doesn't take unnecessary wear and tear. I also set my power button option so that when I press it, my computer goes to sleep. I find this is a very underrated time-saving feature for those who like to put their computer to sleep and pick up right where they left off after a break from their session. I prefer to manually turn the computer off through the start button in the corner of the screen by pressing shut down, so it won't really cause problems for my own personal configuration. Back to core system settings, I skip down to nearby sharing, and I like to make sure that nearby sharing is turned off. I like to disable this feature on any computer that's going to be using public networks, and I also really just don't like the idea of anyone being able to connect to my computer in general, even on a private network. Back to core system settings, we're going to scroll down to advanced settings, and you're going to see a lot of development options here. If you're experienced in coding or software developing, I don't know why you're watching this video because this is all going to seem pretty basic to you, but you can enable developer mode here, and you can also enable the option to run sudo commands, which are basically just running commands from a console window with more permissions. I prefer the default terminal to be Windows Terminal because I feel like PowerShell has more capabilities than the standard console from previous versions of Windows. I also like to make sure that device portal and device discovery are turned off on this page. I really just, again, cannot stress enough how much I dislike data mining, how much I dislike Windows making it default that any entity is allowed to take control of my computer or take control of any aspects of my computer. Back to system settings, I'm going to scroll down to recovery. I really dislike Windows saving snapshots of my PC for recovery, and while it may come in handy for some of you with hard drive failures or other issues that require PC resets, if I can stop any data mining on my end, I prefer to do so. Choose your preferences wisely, and let's move on back to system settings. Back to systems, scrolling down, let's click optional features. It's not going to show me this option to select again because I've already done it, but in history, I can show you that I've disabled facial recognition, again to remove as much data mining potential as possible. The final system page I want to mention is the About page. At first glance, this page is probably just going to look like it's giving you information about your PC, but with a closer look, we can see the Advanced System Settings tab, and this menu that opens up with that button is very powerful. Upon opening, you're going to see the Performance menu at the top of the list, and if you have limited hardware resources, you could spend a long time customizing this page to make your computer run smoothly. Personally, under Visual Effects, I disable animations for controls, elements, maximizing windows, and the taskbar, as well as shadows under the mouse pointer and windows. I don't find much visual gain from these options, and I like having more processing power. After visual effects are set to your liking, under the Advanced tab, you should always set your paging file size to a larger amount when using NVMe drives, because these new drives can run at speeds that outdated RAM chips used to run to, and doing so can vastly improve performance, especially on PCs with less powerful CPUs and GPUs. But you want to make sure that you have an NVMe drive and not a physical hard drive before modifying these settings if you don't know what you're doing. I have 2 NVMe drives and a total of 30 gigabytes of paging files because this configuration works well for my needs, but every system is different, so you can really play around with these choices to figure out how to get more speed for your PC, but to avoid causing issues, I recommend never setting the paging file size smaller than its original size. After you've customized these pages to your liking, you can go ahead and click OK on both of these boxes, and if you've modified the paging file size, it may ask you to restart your PC, but we can pick up in settings after you're back online. I know the system settings page can keep you busy for a lot of hours with customization, but thankfully we're through my list of customizations for that section, and we can move on to the personalization section of the settings app. The section is a lot less technical, and it's definitely a lot more lighthearted to work with. Background settings are pretty straightforward, so I'm going to skip those and we can go into the colors options. First of all, if you set your PC to dark mode, it offers you a lot more customization than light mode for whatever reason. All of the elements of Windows possible will appear dark, like this settings page, but with dark mode enabled, you can also set your taskbar and window accents to any color of your choosing. Strangely, that also includes colors that will make it impossible to read text or see icons, so be careful to listen to the color manager warning when choosing a dangerous color. Back to personalization settings, I like to go to the lock screen options and disable both tips and tricks as well as widgets because it provides me a lot less clutter on the lock screen as well as less advertising to deal with. Next, in personalization settings, I'm going to focus on the start menu options. In my configuration, I've disabled the search button on my taskbar that usually appears at the bottom left. So the start menu is where I conduct my PC searches for programs and settings. I also use it to launch my selected frequently used programs, and this means that I want my start menu customized for efficiency because I'm going to be using it a lot more than people who prefer the search icon. I start with the default template and I disable all recommendation features so that only my own selections show up when I initialize the start menu because I don't like being advertised to on my own computer. After that's done, it will look something like this depending on what folders and programs you have chosen to show up here. Back to the personalization page, I'm going to be moving on to taskbar settings. This page can also be opened by right-clicking the taskbar. I disable widgets here too because it involves location tracking to show you weather and updates as well as advertising. I keep task view enabled in case I need the ability to work on multiple projects at once. Also, under taskbar behaviors, I like to align the taskbar to the left for a classic Windows feel. Other than that, we're finished with my personalization recommendations, so let's go back to the settings app and click apps. Then we're going to want to click startup apps because this is a very overlooked page on Windows I've found just speaking with friends of mine who use Windows. Here you'll find that you can customize programs that are going to launch when you first turn on your PC. By default, even with a fresh Windows install, you'll have a lot of programs booting on startup, and I strongly dislike the default nature of this bloatware, so I make sure to only allow programs that I know are vital to the operation of my PC and my connected devices. I don't think Windows needs to be always launching programs like Microsoft Edge when I never use the browser. After that, we can head to the Privacy and Security tab. This is a page where Windows gives you control of a cluster of other data mining practices. Let's start with recommendations and offers. Just trash everything in here if you don't like data mining. These options are really predatory when enabled, and you'll probably find yourself wondering how YouTube knows how to show you an ad for something that you just looked up on your computer. We live in an age where a well-designed AI can create a profile of you and know every little detail about your life down to the next time you'll need a glass of water. So I find disabling things like this to be a minor victory in the fight to make it just a little bit harder for companies to data mine me. I mean, you're never going to stop it completely, but at least you can feel a little bit more in control than before. Back to the Privacy and Security tab, I disable speech recognition entirely, then I return, and I scroll down to diagnostics and feedback, I disable optional diagnostics data for the same reasons as the last couple of options. Almost done with privacy and security. We're moving on to the search category. This category can be a bit nebulous for new users, so let me show you my favorite ways to block unnecessary spyware through your search system. I disable search history and highlights an account's search history so they don't have my permission to save my search habits. If you have a private folder or series of folders that you would like kept to your eyes only, you can select the enhanced search indexing template and manually identify folders on your PC that should not be allowed to be indexed, meaning identified by your computer to show up in search results. After, to finalize privacy and security settings, one final note, just make sure your permissions for your microphone, camera, and location are set to only allow apps that you trust completely. There are always going to be new apps trying to gain access to these permissions. For instance, I would never let Microsoft Copilot access my microphone for even a split second. Once that's completed, I've only got some other vague and minor tips to get you started in your Windows experience. First, I would recommend that you search for Control Panel on your chosen search bar, and I would pin that to the taskbar. The Windows Settings app is useful for quick glance edits, but the Control Panel is the original settings interface from earlier versions of Windows, and often it's a much more powerful tool for customizing settings. Another vague tip, I recommend familiarizing yourself with the menu open by right-clicking the Start button on the taskbar. These options are used frequently when problem-solving issues like malfunctioning Bluetooth devices and other Windows errors. If you have the hardware for it, I also recommend a program called Parsec for remote manipulation of your machine. With Parsec, you can stream your PC to your phone, tablet, or another PC, and the program has incredibly low latency, so much so that I can play online video games from my phone on my desktop with reliably good control over my game. But even if you don't play games, it's a very handy program for on-the-go access of files on a desktop or stationary PC. This program has saved me a lot of trouble on many occasions. My final tip is to know your hardware and how to use it. If you have a custom-built PC, all of your components are going to require drivers, and you should know what programs are going to update those drivers. For example, if you have an Asus motherboard, Armory Crate, and similar programs are going to update your system drivers. And even if you have a manufactured PC, you'll still likely have a program to update system drivers. Keeping these updated are going to ensure that your PC is a well-oiled machine ready for any task you can throw its way. That concludes my Windows customization recommendations. Thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this content, give me a thumbs up, and consider subscribing for more software and gaming tutorials. I know you might have some other options you prefer for your Windows setups, so leave comments and tell us what your favorite feature options are. I'll see you around. Peace.